My family ended up hijacking the vacation I had planned and turned it into a trip centered around my sister Samantha and her kids. But this time around, I had a quiet little plan of my own to slip away. I've been dealing with issues involving my family for years, decades really, but it's a bit of a story. Even though we seemed like a regular suburban family in Connecticut growing up, I, just your average guy in his mid-30s, have always found it tough to navigate the family dynamics. My older sister Samantha, who's now 40, has always been the favorite, the so-called golden child. Since I was a kid, it felt like our entire home was dedicated to Samantha's life. Her awards lined the walls, and every conversation somehow circled back to her. One moment that stuck with me all these years happened when I turned 11. My folks were so caught up prepping Samantha for her college interviews that they forgot to buy me a birthday cake. I remember them trying to pass off her leftover graduation cake as mine. It still had her name on it. As time went on, anything I achieved seemed to vanish in Samantha's shadow. I hit the honor roll in middle school, but my parents barely noticed because Samantha had just joined the debate team. When I won a local painting contest in high school, they missed the award ceremony because Samantha had to visit a college campus. Eventually, I stopped sharing good news because I knew it'd just be brushed off with a quick, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation swung back to Samantha. I'd end up celebrating my wins alone in my room. Even our stuff showed where their priorities were. Samantha had the latest gadgets, fashionable clothes, and everything she needed for her many after-school activities. Meanwhile, my room was full of things she'd outgrown. When I said I wanted music lessons, they gave me her old violin, her worn-out clothes, and leftover school supplies. That violin was too big for me to play properly. When I asked for one that fit, my mom told me, "We already spent so much on Samantha's piano lessons this year." That same pattern stuck around through high school. While Samantha got private SAT tutoring, I had to make do with books from the public library. They even took out a loan to buy her a car for college, but when I needed help getting around, they told me to catch the bus. Every money decision, family talk, and even holidays seemed to revolve around what Samantha wanted. College hit especially hard. Samantha got her degree from a top-tier university, fully backed by our parents. But when it was my turn, they said they could only cover half the cost at a state school. "We're still paying off Samantha's loans," they said. "You'll need to find a way to cover the rest." So I juggled 2 part-time jobs, barely staying awake over my textbooks. At the same time, Samantha was stepping into a job that our parents helped her land through people they knew. 8 years ago, she got married and things didn't just stay the same. They got even worse. For a whole year, everything was about her wedding. Our parents went all in, designer dress, fancy venue, over 200 guests, and took out yet another loan to make it all happen. I remember overhearing them one night in the kitchen, saying they'd find a way to pay for it because Samantha deserved the best. Of course, I was expected to be the maid of honor. That meant organizing the bridal showers, throwing a big bachelorette party, and putting out fires whenever things went wrong. When I tried to explain how overwhelmed I was balancing all this while working full-time, my mom said, "Don't be selfish, Dorothy. This is your sister's big moment." And right after the wedding chaos came another bombshell. Samantha was having twins. Our parents were over the moon. Even though they were still paying off the wedding loan, my folks decided to help Samantha and her husband with the down payment on a house near them. I watched them dip into the retirement fund they once told me was off-limits back when I needed help paying for college. But according to them, this time was different. "This is for our grandkids," they said. And guess who became the go-to babysitter? Yep, me. At first, it was just now and then. "Dorothy, can you watch the boys for a few hours?" But that quickly turned into a weekly thing, and eventually, I was expected to keep them in the evenings anytime Samantha and Eugene had plans. My parents were all for it, saying stuff like, "This is what family does." And whenever I tried to push back, Samantha and her husband just acted like it was a given that I'd always be available. I do love those boys, I really do, but they're full of energy and honestly keeping up with them wears me out. Every weekend it's the same drill. Samantha drops them off at my place with barely a heads up. She'll say she needs me time, or has something important to do. And before I know it, my tiny apartment is a wreck. When I try to set boundaries or ask for some warning ahead of time, she starts crying about how overwhelmed she is, and then my parents chime in to tell me I'm being selfish or unsupportive. Meanwhile, I've been putting in long hours trying to make a name for myself in marketing. Just recently, I was offered a promotion, more responsibility, more travel, better pay. I brought it up at a family dinner, hoping someone might be proud of me. Instead, my mom said, "But what about the twins? Your sister needs you here." And Samantha went, "You can't take that job, Dorothy. Who's going to help me with the boys?" It felt like my job, my goals, my whole life didn't matter to them at all. My dad looked at me and said, "Family should come first, Dorothy." My mom added, "Your sister has 2 kids to care for," like that somehow meant I had none of my own responsibilities. And when I tried explaining how exhausting it all was, Samantha accused me of being jealous of her life, of her kids. She said, "You're just bitter because you're still single, like that's the only thing that defines whether I'm successful or not." After one especially rough weekend watching the boys, during which they broke my laptop and drew all over my couch, I finally hit my limit. I decided I was going to treat myself to a beach getaway. I needed it. Badly. I found a quiet little resort in California that looked like the perfect place to unwind. But when I mentioned it during our weekly family dinner, my mom's face lit up. "Oh, that's perfect. We should all go together. The twins would love the beach." Before I could say a word, Samantha had already started planning everything. "You can take the boys swimming while Eugene and I get some time alone," she said, like it was already decided that I'd be in charge of them on my own vacation. My parents even offered to upgrade my stay on the condition that I help out with the kids, booking all of us at a fancier resort. Just like that, my peaceful escape turned into a family trip focused on keeping the twins entertained. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision that changed everything. I booked a different resort, on a quiet island, just for me. I didn't say a word to anyone. I quietly got my time off approved, started packing in secret, and made sure I had access to my emergency fund. I'll admit it wasn't the most honest thing to do, but I honestly couldn't take it anymore. At the airport, they'll be heading to California, and I'll be boarding a different flight to my own destination. I've turned off location sharing and braced myself for the fallout. Yeah, I know it's going to stir up some drama. Yeah, I know they're going to be upset. But for the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. I've been the reliable sister, the helpful daughter, and the always-on-call aunt for 32 years. I gave up my weekends, skipped out on dating, and passed up career moves just to be there for them. I put my own life on pause to meet their expectations. But now, I'm not just escaping a family vacation, I'm breaking free from a lifetime of being used. I've decided this trip isn't just a break, it's a turning point. I need to start setting real boundaries with my family. Honestly, I might even need a full-on break from them for a while. I'm tired of being the one who always sacrifices, the one who holds everything together, the fallback for every little crisis. So I figured I'd ask myself, am I overreacting? Is it selfish to want something different for myself? Should I really just keep doing what they expect of me and stay in the role they've assigned me in this family? To my surprise, things actually went off without a hitch, but man, the day at the airport was more emotional than I expected. I made sure to get there early and went straight to a different check-in area, far away from where my family would be. Through the big glass wall in the terminal, I saw them show up. Eugene was fiddling with their booking info, my parents looked excited, Samantha was trying to wrangle the twins and deal with all the luggage. I waited until they started walking toward their check-in desk, then slipped through security and made my way to my own gate. Not long after, my phone started buzzing like crazy. First came the confused texts. "Where are you? We're at gate B10? Then came the worried ones. "Are you okay, Dorothy? Did something happen?" And finally, the angry ones. "How could you do this to us? The boys are crying." Before boarding, I turned off my phone. And right there in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. It was this strange mix of guilt and freedom. I'd lived under the weight of guilt for most of my life, but freedom? That was new. And honestly, it felt incredible. They were headed to a packed beach town full of noisy families and chaos. Meanwhile, I landed on a quiet little island where the moment I stepped onto the sand, all that stress I'd been carrying just melted away. No kids to watch. No one calling my name. No agenda, no expectations. Just me, the ocean, and peace. The first couple of days were surprisingly hard, though. I kept looking at the clock thinking, this is usually when the boys eat lunch, or Samantha would be asking for help with bedtime right about now. You don't break free of decades of conditioning overnight. But by day 3, something shifted. I started doing things I'd always wanted to try, things I never had time for. I signed up for a surfing lesson and, even though I wiped out a lot, I laughed more than I had in years. I joined a beach yoga class and made friends with a small group of other solo travelers. One evening, I had dinner with this charming guy I met at the resort cafe. It wasn't anything serious, just a casual meal. But it reminded me that there's a whole world outside of my family's needs. A world where I could be someone other than Aunt Dorothy or Samantha's backup. After 6 days, I finally turned my phone back on. That's when reality hit me. There were dozens of voicemails, over 200 texts, 98 missed calls. My mom even called my job claiming there was a family emergency. Luckily, I had already told my boss I'd be away and not reachable. Some of the voicemails were rough. My mom went from worried to furious to full-on manipulative. "Dorothy, how could you do this to your family? The boys are heartbroken. Did we raise you to be like this?" Samantha's messages were even worse. "You ruined everything. The boys keep asking for Aunt Dorothy. I had to cancel meetings because Eugene couldn't handle them on his own." But one message stood out. It was from my dad. He sounded different, uncertain even. He said, "Dorothy, please just let us know you're okay. I don't know what's going on, but I hope you're safe." I'd never heard him speak to me without immediately taking Samantha's side or trying to guilt me into something. So I replied, "Just once. I'm safe and having a great vacation. I'll reach out when I'm back. Please give me space." Then I muted the group chat and went back to enjoying my trip. The next few days were life-changing. Instead of reading bedtime stories to the twins, I read 2 whole novels for myself. I talked to strangers at the resort without being interrupted. And every evening, instead of hurrying home to help with baths and bedtime, I sat on the beach and watched the sunset. I even started journaling. Just me, pouring out years of bottled-up frustration, grief, and exhaustion onto paper. Last night I had dinner at a quiet little beach cafe. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. My last night on the island, I ate dinner at this quiet little beach cafe. An older waitress noticed I was alone and asked if I was enjoying the solitude. I told her briefly what brought me there. Just a little escape from family chaos. She looked me right in the eye and said something that stuck with me. "Family's important, honey. But not if it costs you your peace. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself." That hit me hard. When I got home, I didn't go straight to my apartment. I'd booked a hotel room for 3 nights to give myself space to mentally prepare for what I knew was coming. The confrontation. While I was there, I updated my work emergency contacts, changed the locks on my doors, and most importantly, I wrote out my boundaries clear as day. Unfortunately, I accidentally liked a coworker's social media post, and that's how my family found out I was back in town. Within hours, my mom and Samantha were at my apartment building, ringing the buzzer nonstop. I watched them from the window of my hotel room across the street. And instead of panic or guilt, I just felt removed. Like I was watching a play I'd seen too many times. I decided to meet them the next day, but on neutral ground. A local coffee shop. Not my home. I needed to keep some control over the situation. I rehearsed what I wanted to say, but my hands still shook every time I thought about it. Still, for the first time in my life, I was choosing me. Even with the fear, the guilt, and the storm I knew was coming, I knew I was doing the right thing. We met the next morning at the coffee shop. It was even more intense than I imagined. I got there early, picked a corner seat where I could see both the entrance and the emergency exit. A little habit I'd picked up over years of anticipating drama. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my coffee. My parents arrived with Samantha, and Eugene surprisingly. Thankfully, no twins. Before anyone could launch into a speech, I spoke up. Calmly. Just like I'd practiced. "I'm setting boundaries. They're not up for discussion." And from there, it turned into a full-blown emotional circus. Samantha cried, saying my absence had traumatized the twins. "My mom went the guilt route. After everything we've done for you," Eugene, to his credit, tried to offer a compromise. "Maybe I could just take the boys every other weekend." My dad mostly sat there, looking uncomfortable, not saying much. But then Samantha hit me with, "You're being selfish. Family means sacrifice." That did it. Something in me snapped, but not in an angry way. Just, clear. I told her, as calmly as I could. "You're right. Family does mean sacrifice, but it's supposed to go both ways. When was the last time any of you sacrificed anything for me? You could have heard a pin drop." Then I laid it all out. For the first time ever, I said everything I'd held in for years. How I'd always felt like Samantha's backup plan. How they treated my time and energy like it didn't matter. How I'd bent over backward to support them while they gave nothing in return. I even pulled out my calendar from the past year, showing how every weekend was booked for babysitting and every holiday was spent catering to their needs. My mom tried to cut me off with, "But that's what aunts do." I said, "No, that's what paid babysitters do. And Samantha, if you need this much help, maybe it's time to hire one." That was the breaking point. Samantha stormed out, my mom following close behind. Eugene actually stayed. He looked embarrassed, honestly. He admitted they'd taken advantage of me and he apologized, not perfectly, but it was something. My dad finally spoke. "We never meant to make you feel this way." Again, not an apology. But at least he said something. Once they left, I put the rest of my plan into motion. I moved. Found a new apartment in a different part of the city. It's smaller, but it's safe, with a doorman who knows not to let anyone up unless I say so. Only my job and a few close friends have my new number. The hardest part wasn't the move or the logistics, it was rebuilding my life from the ground up. I didn't really have hobbies. I barely had close friends. I'd spent years being on call for my family and ignoring my own life. So I started small. I signed up for a pottery class. I joined a local book club. I finally said yes to a coworker's dinner invite, something I used to always turn down. It's not perfect yet. But for the first time in forever, my life is mine. That first weekend of real freedom? It was strange. Not bad, just unfamiliar. I stayed up late for no reason. Walked through a farmer's market just because I felt like it. Spent over an hour wandering a used bookstore without checking my phone once. No frantic texts from Samantha. No guilt-ridden voicemails from mom. No last-minute pleas for babysitting. It was quiet. Unnervingly quiet. My family didn't take my move well, though that wasn't exactly a shock. My mom tried to reach me through my office switchboard, only to find out my company doesn't allow personal calls during business hours. Samantha even showed up at my office once, but I'd already warned security. Not long after that, she sent a handwritten letter full of tears and accusations telling me I was tearing the family apart. Eugene surprisingly emailed me an apology. He admitted that he'd contributed to the mess and said he was sorry. At first, Samantha didn't want him taking the twins out on his own, but eventually she gave in. It's a small shift, but an important one. My parents are having a harder time adjusting. Dad sends the occasional awkward text, trying to start a conversation. Mom bounces between silence and dramatic voicemails. Her latest: "When you're done with this rebellion, we'll welcome you back." She still doesn't get it. This isn't a phase. This is my life now. Work has gotten so much better. With no constant interruptions, I've become more focused, more productive. My boss noticed and put me in charge of a major new project. I've even started dating again, casually and on my terms. But the biggest change? It's internal. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I don't have this constant hum of anxiety in the background. I've been exercising regularly, eating better, sleeping through the night. And yes, I've started therapy. My therapist calls it chronic family stress syndrome. I never even knew that was a thing. But it fits. Last weekend, I got a little package from the twins. Inside were handmade cards saying they missed me. It was sweet and sad. I wrote them back. Told them I love them, but I need time to take care of myself. I don't know if Samantha will actually read it to them. But I had to say it. The other day, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. She said, "You look lighter. Like years have lifted off you." She was right. Even with the angry texts, the guilt trips, the manipulation, I do feel lighter. More free. I'm learning that real love, real family, shouldn't feel like a burden or a sentence. It should include respect for boundaries, mutual support, and space for your own needs. Not just endless sacrifice. Next week marks 1 month in my new apartment. I'm actually hosting a little housewarming party, my first ever. Just a few folks from pottery class, my book club, and work friends. No drama. No demands. Just people who like me for who I am. Honestly, I wouldn't have had the guts to make this kind of change without this community. It's been 4 months since everything shifted. A full season of learning how to stand on my own. And then last week, the final confrontation I both dreaded and expected finally happened. My dad showed up. Unlike Samantha's dramatics or mom's frantic messages, he was calm. Almost resigned. He asked if I'd meet him for lunch. We went to a quiet little restaurant near my office. For the first time ever, I felt like he saw me. Not as Samantha's sister, not as the available one, but as his daughter. He looked at me and said, "You look healthy, happier." And he sounded surprised. That one sentence said more than I think he realized. He told me the family had come up with a proposal. If I came back into the fold, they'd give me every other weekend off. They'd even pay me for my time with the twins. That's when it hit me. They still didn't get it. To them, my independence was a bargaining chip. Something to be negotiated. They didn't see it as my right. I looked at my dad across the table and realized I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was just done. "Dad," I told him, "I'm not negotiating my freedom. I'm living it." What followed was the most honest conversation I've ever had with him. I laid it all out, how always putting Samantha first had affected me, not just practically but emotionally too. I brought up birthdays they forgot, wins they ignored, dreams I'd quietly let go of, stuff he either never noticed or just didn't think mattered. And you know what? He didn't jump to defend himself. He just sat there silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "We thought we were doing what was best for the family. We didn't see how much we were hurting you." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was the first time he actually acknowledged me. Then he asked about my life. Really asked. And he listened, like actually listened, as I talked about my pottery class, my job, the new people I've been spending time with. I even showed him a picture of a little lopsided vase I'd made. I expected a dismissive smile. But instead he said, "You've built a good life for yourself. Without us." There was pride in his voice. And sadness too. But both were real. When we said goodbye, he hugged me. A real hug. First one in years. "I hope someday we can be part of your life again," he said. But on different terms. That conversation must have lit a fuse though. Because not long after, the drama started up again. Mom launched into another round of emotional blackmail, telling relatives I'm having some kind of breakdown and need an intervention. Samantha's been posting snide comments on social media. Stuff about selfish sisters and broken families. Apparently, she feels betrayed that Dad didn't take her side. But here's the difference. It doesn't hit me the same way anymore. I've got a new lens now. I can see their behavior for what it is, an attempt to hold on to control over someone who's finally stepped out from under their thumb. My apartment finally feels like home. There are photos on the wall, me with my friends, people who actually respect my space. Some of my pottery pieces are there too, proudly imperfect. At work, I've started mentoring a couple of junior colleagues. I'm breaking the pattern. No more endless self-sacrifice. And time? Time is finally mine. I spend my weekends however I want. I've joined a hiking group. I'm learning Spanish. I've even started seeing someone who respects my boundaries without question. For the first time, I'm not shaping my life around what my family expects. I'm shaping it around who I actually am. The twins sent another card last week, clearly dictated by someone else. The wording was off, like it had been coached. Once that would have wrecked me. I would have spiraled into guilt and second-guessing. This time I wrote back gently, telling them I still love them deeply, even if I'm not around every day, and that sometimes adults need to take care of themselves too. My therapist says I'm going through something called post-traumatic growth. It's not just healing. It's building something stronger in place of what used to be broken. She's helped me understand that it's not my job to fix the dysfunction in my family. And then just yesterday Eugene called. Not to guilt trip me, but to share something real. He said that since I stepped away, things in their house have started to shift. They hired part-time help for the twins. He's become more hands-on as a dad. It's better for everyone, he told me, though he admitted Samantha's still struggling with the change. Right now, I'm sitting in my home office, prepping for a business trip, something I never would have imagined doing back in my old life. There's a framed quote behind my desk that sums it all up. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set yourself free. And that's what I did. If you're listening this and wondering if you're selfish for wanting your own life, you're not. Wanting peace isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't betrayal. Loving yourself isn't wrong. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. Maybe one day we'll rebuild something new, something based on mutual respect, not just obligation. But right now I'm focused on the life I'm building, my friends, my passions, my work, myself. This isn't an ending. It's a beginning, and for the first time in my life, I'm excited about what comes next.